Thank you very much, Sanjot. So I don't introduce myself because Sanjot did. My good friend, Dr. Sanjot Mahindale, Chair of the Tang Center for Silk Road Studies at UC Berkeley, has asked me to introduce today's keynote speaker. I gladly accepted this honor, as it is always a pleasure to introduce a friend. Professor Monika Zin, today's keynote speaker, is not just a friend to me, but an invaluable friend with whom I have shared my passion for the ancient art for the last 25 years. We are honored to have Professor Monika Zin as the keynote speaker at the present conference entitled Desert Mosaic, the Kucha Oasis Along the Ancient Silk Roads, organized by the Tang Center for Silk Road Studies. Most of you know her, not only for her worldwide reputation as an outstanding art historian in the field of ancient Buddhist art of South and Central Asia, but also because she was at UC Berkeley 4 years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, as a distinguished guest of the Tang Center for Silk Road Studies. Monika started her studies at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland, with theater studies and Polish language and literature. She then followed her doctoral studies in Indology and Indian art and obtained her Ph.D. in 1991 and her habilitation also in Indology in 2000 as a Ludwig-Maximilian University in Munich. In 2000, she joined the Faculty of Cultural Sciences, Department of Asian Studies, Institute for Indology and Tibetology at the same Ludwig-Maximilian University as Associate Professor for Indian Art and History, Art History. Next to this, she held a position as a lecturer for the Buddhist art and literature in the Department of Indology and Central Asian Sciences at the University of Leipzig from 2005 to 2008, and was visiting professor in the Department of Art History at the Free University in Berlin from 2010 to 2014, and she invited me to give a talk on the day that they closed the department at the Free University. Monika currently leads the research group, Buddhist Murals of Kucha, on the Northern Silk Road at the University of Leipzig. We recognize good scholars by their tutors. Professor Dieter Schingloff was Monika's teacher, who shared his vast knowledge with her, so much so that he later became her co-author, at least for 2 books. Monika was also trained in the most renowned German schools of philology and iconography. In turn, she teaches her students the rigor of thought and critical spirit that must be applied to the study of historical documentation. Satomi Hiyama and Fong Wong, who are here with us today and who will speak to us tomorrow, are excellent examples of Guru Shishya Parampara. Monika has published a series of articles and books covering vast geographical area from Andhra to Chinese Central Asia via Maharashtra, Mathura, and Gandhara, and spanning a chronological space from the 3rd century BC to the pre-modern period. She has made a considerable contribution to the Buddhist narrative art of Ajanta paintings and the Kanaganali Stupa, which is a remarkable analysis of 60 Kanchukas, slabs covering the dome. Her book on representations of the Parinirvana story cycle deals, among other things, with the posterity of Indian culture in Central Asia in the Buddhist sites of Kucha. Her previous publication in German, entitled Mittelalter und Wunderkraft, Schwierige Bücherjungen und Ikonographie im indischen Buddhismus, Compassion and Miracle Power, Difficult Conversations and Their Iconography in Indian Buddhism, deals with the episodes from the legendary biography of the Buddha in which the Buddha converts or tames violent individuals. In numerous publications, Monika examines art objects and their iconography in relation to literary sources, cultural, religious and historical context, and the trans-regional networks of the early Buddhist world that lie behind them. In so doing, it opens up a wide range of fascinating scientific perspective and questions. Monika's latest book, Gods, Deities, and Demons in the Paintings of Kucha, changes our perspectives on the paintings in the Buddhist caves of Kisil of Northern Silk Road by showing the important role that deity spirits, benevolent or malevolent, and demons, demoniac iconography in general, played in the pictorial programs of these caves. Indeed, it is surprising how many stories of this type depicted at Kucha. We were discussing this in Leipzig very longly when you had this huge manuscript. The Kucha paintings show things that have never been popular in South Asia, demons attacking the Buddha, but also worshipping him. The message is clear. They are all controlled by the Buddha, and the Buddha never killed the demons, but he converted them. So we are looking forward to Monika's talk today to find out more about the Tocharian Buddha and the local demons. So please join me in welcoming today's keynote speaker, my good friend, Professor Monika Zin.
Many, many thanks, Osmund. I feel ashamed. I didn't know. Thanks, really. That was fantastic. Well, let us start without further ado, because I should not, when I start, to just say hello to everyone who's here, so I rather stop with. So many thanks for coming, many thanks for inviting me. It was really great invitation. I'm really enjoying every moment staying here in Berkeley. We will go to Kucha right now, but first I just would like you to imagine a situation. Just try to imagine that it is a year 3500 and the great excavations happen. Several really interesting buildings have been discovered, and we are in the place we call today San Francisco. What was discovered? This is Mission Dolores. This is Cathedral of St. Paul and Peter and Paul. This is the Notre Dame, I think that's the name, and old Cathedral of St. Mary. Great, absolutely fantastic buildings. Archaeology says now we know a lot about old 1,500 places, 100 years places. And the places are fantastic preserved. And we even have sculptures and paintings inside. We have books. We even have not only books belonging to that, but different scriptures which were by chance there. So we could say now we know everything about San Francisco 1,500 years ago. So the point is, what we know about Kucha, it's something like that. We have only Catholic, not even Christian, but we have only so-called Shravakayana, Hinayana monasteries. They are well preserved, and we also have inscriptions, we have manuscripts. We have also not only religious scriptures. So it is quite easy to come to the conclusion that all these people staying there, they were extremely religious. What they wanted to do, the main point was to pay to monks to support monasteries. And we're supposed to know something about entire region. And we forget that Chinese pilgrims to the area don't even mention the caves. That was a fantastic kingdom, but what we have are just the caves. And it looks we will not know more, because there are no further excavations and probably will never be done. And actually we even don't know if there is something to excavate, because there are other settlements on the top, so maybe there is nothing. We simply don't know. So the question is, should we just expect more, or try to see something behind the curtain of the Buddhism? That we can do in Leipzig, where we have huge material, really huge material. We have thousands of pictures, we have manuscripts, we can read them. We have for today knowledge of the language of the area, which was Tocharian B. We have manuscripts from the area, we have inscriptions, and so on and so on. And we have the pictorial materials, and here you can see we have old pictures when paintings, murals were still in situ. We have these murals, or at least documentation of them. We have drawings by Grunwedel, and today we really can start to compare it. And the most important is that we have so many of different pictures that we see connections, for example, between places in temples and particular pictures, and which only a couple of years ago we had one example of a story, now we have 20. So, just on this example, there is the Buddha and there are different demons around. What we see here, it's just, they are my drawings, that does not say whose drawings, they are my drawings. This is Garuda, and of course we know Garuda from different, that's the most similar to Gandhara, so Garuda is there, we can recognize him. But on the side of Garuda, it's definitely the dress of a lady. So that's his wife, Garudi, which is not existent in Indian culture. It's absolutely not there. And she is not only just standing on the side, but she has a sword. It is mythology behind, and we know nothing about it. So examples, I still have a picture that you see how beautiful blue she is. And because our material we have is so big, that's Garudi preserved here, but I can say in another cave, in exactly the same wall, antechamber right side wall, that was again her picture. Definitely. She is not preserved, but when you can compare, all of a sudden you recognize that was depicted several times. Such examples are really many. We give them names, which does not tell us that we know who they are. Grunwedel called this really particular person Kshitipati, which tells us absolutely nothing. Just somebody taking care of the area, or in such a sense. On his body are demons depicted, and he is standing in water. And on two sides there are different animals, real and not real. This is the only representation of that kind in the entire Kucha. That was my research, but I can just show you something from research of Fang Wang, who will talk to us tomorrow. The picture shows a marriage. This is Bodhisattva, Siddhartha, and his wife. And it is something in between. Actually, you think that the picture is just there are scratches. Yeah, but it is not. And when you look carefully, there are arrows. So we have arrows between a couple. Nothing like that, as far as I know, in Indian literature, in Buddhist literature, in Central Asian literature. So you can start to search maybe on in today's literature. Found something, but well, so maybe she will tell us something about that. So who were these people who depicted themselves on the side of the Buddha, and who definitely wanted to stay in connection with them? We have a lot of representation, and that also in particular places in the caves. So they belonged to the program of the caves. They were represented in the corridors going to the rear part. In this rear part was usually the depiction of the dying Buddha, and shown like coming back. So they had seen with parinirvana on the Buddha, and they are coming back. So this is where they are depicted, or on the front wall. Then quite often there are monks above, and these donors, Tocharian, below. How they look like, we know from representations. Even they are not usual portraits of people. They are all the same big. They are all standing on tiptoe, which probably means that they are riders. They are not shown with horses, but we have some representation of people riding horses. So they're always this feet in such a position. Yeah, so they are simply there. We know, because we know this language, Tocharian, it belongs to Indo-European family, so they are blonde, red-haired, and so they were sort of Indo-Europeans, which may show us that they tried to be different than other parts of Central Asia. That could have been sort of their identity, which perhaps may explain something. But also in later time, we have Uyghur donors depicted on sort of the same places in the caves. So we call them donors because actually we don't know anything better, but sometimes they are depicted in the way that actually we are not so certain. Are they really donors? And one looks like, well, that's maybe a crescent, and this peaks below that it's really not so certain, but because there is a monk in front of them, so actually it probably makes sense to consider them as being really elite of the Tocharians. That's really interesting picture, because that's a historical scene. That's the first sermon of the Buddha, and on the side we have donors. We even know their names. And Satomi, who is here with us, and we'll talk another day, had really interesting paper about it, because the queen depicted here has little snakes in her headdress. It may mean that they consider themselves like, well, maybe coming from Nagas. But that's actually still asking questions. We don't know exactly how they understood themselves. And there are also pictures like this, exactly in this corridor. So when we expect only donors, but only part of them are donors. Other look with this Indian-like dress, actually like bodhisattvas, but they are not bodhisattvas. That we can be absolutely sure, because all bodhisattvas always have halo and mandorla around their bodies, so that they are definitely not bodhisattvas. And have a look that they are coming out, and they are just about maybe to honor the Buddha on the main wall. They are just coming from the side to back to the main chamber, but there are tiny person on their side who are adoring them, not the Buddha. So maybe they are sort of deities, and we only take them for donors. So who are clad in this usual, what we consider to be Tocharian dress, but they are really standing among other person. And also here, we call them donor, but the head is really strange, and we know such head from real deities who are standing here with Indra and Brahma on the side of future Buddha, on the side of Maitreya. So from southern Silk Road, Khotan area, there are such deities. So maybe we are wrong in considering everyone just to be a donor. Maybe they were deities just wearing long dresses, local gods, local deities. For that could have been some really interesting point, because some of these, let's say, donors still, and we will stay with these donors because actually that there are no real proofs that they are not. But there are small female here, but there are also places with male deities holding their feet, and to know that would be really interesting, because there's a tradition about deities which really goes with this Bishamon till Japan, and it probably starts in the southern Silk Road, or maybe with Kucha on our territory, and we are wrong with when we understand all these donors being donors. For the time being, as I said, we take them for donors, and actually consider that maybe there was just a special elite who really had this royal understanding of themselves, but that might shown up to be wrong. So here we are in Kucha. Dating, it is something I would not like to touch. Between maybe end of the 5th century until the 10th century, we have on this territory there's many areas of there's clusters of painted caves. What can be discovered from this painting, just telling us more about not only about Buddhism. Of course, everything is only Buddhist at the area. There is, for example, such representations. There are not many, but we find them. Iconography is clear. There are pretas. Pretas are ghosts. Pretas belong to their family ghost. And in Kucha, they always have this really interesting iconography. They have a lot of hair. They are very skinny. So there is a Buddha, and there are pretas. Important is that there is a monk in between. Well, we had one pretty interesting master thesis about it, printed in the next volume of Leipzig Kucha Studies. That was about pretas in the area. The point is that you cannot help the preta. You cannot give them food. Everything is turning to really disgusting things, and they cannot swallow. So you cannot help. Even if they belong to your family, you cannot help them. What you can do is to give money to the monks. And monks make a ritual, and thanks to the glory of the Buddha, they can help pretas. Entire economy can really base on that, because people want to help their pretas of the family. So that's really very interesting point that this pretas may have really economic reason of. So I think that a representation of them could have had this background. Well, this master thesis by Olga Kinzler based a lot of one wonderful book. If you don't know a book by Robert de Caroli, I can really only say, do yourself a favor and read it. It's absolutely worth to read. This is about the formation of Buddhism, and just imagine you are a Buddhist monk, but there are Brahmin or Jaina or different groups. What Buddhist monks could offer is to give no fear in front of pretas, pishachas, rakshasas. How they did it? They were everywhere, and especially there when there are dead corpses or graves, so where all these pretas were also coming. How they could do that? Because they had a power of meditation. So actually this bad pretas were coming, but had to stop because of power of meditation of the monks. So again, entire economy was also, people were coming, were building monasteries, and monasteries with Buddhist monks can really survive because there were places where all these rakshasas and co could not come in. So Robert de Caroli considers the beginning of Buddhism really in connection with this fight against all. And he has so many really interesting and so powerful quotations from different works, not only Buddhist, by the way. He even goes so far that he considers the place of the first of enlightenment of the Buddha like the pre-Buddhist place with a lot of ghosts, where that was the place where he really was successful to fight against them and to win against Mara and all his forces. What the book of De Caroli was based on was this really fantastic paper by Gregory Schotten about immigrant monks and proto-historical death. Actually, where Buddhists were sitting, were coming, there were places with ghosts. There were all these cemeteries and places where all these ghosts were there. And what we know from Buddhism, the monasteries were always outside of the cities. Chopin has just in such an absolutely sober way analyzed archaeological findings, where just descriptions, there is a Buddhist stupa, but archaeological found that there was something underneath. It was not only in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa where the stupa was standing on the dead city from before, but we have across entire India really such examples. So there was something, this proto-historical death was there. With this in mind, I wrote a paper about Kucha, because that was always my idea that we have some problems with dating of several paintings in Kucha. So we have paintings which belong to the oldest, we consider to be the oldest, the first Indo-Iranian style, which are not in the center, but somewhere far away in the periphery. I risked that a very dear friend, Giuseppe Vignato, hates me now because, yes, he does. Well, because he is a real good scientist and he is coming with good and really well-motivated research. The oldest paintings are here in the middle because we have their great light, we have great water supply, and we have this earlier painting, so this is the middle, and from that Buddhist and caves spread to the entire area. And this is really the real reason to see like that. The point is, however, that we also have 3 places in the area of Kizil, which is the biggest of all sites in Kucha. One on the far west, one on the far north, and also this one, cave 92. We'll come to that right now. And so in these places we have the oldest paintings, which in my opinion are not necessarily later than this 76-77, which Vignato considers to be the oldest. Well, let us have a look first to this 212 on the eastern part of Kizil. There are 2 extremely interesting narratives depicted on the long walls of this cave. Shrona Kotikarna Avadana and Maitra Kanyaka. This below is from the exhibition in Tokyo, just to give you idea how this long cave looked like. The paintings have been removed, so today in the cave is not so interesting. One of the paintings is in Berlin, another was destroyed. But to this program of the cave belong also monks. This one is in situ, another one is in Berlin. There are monks meditating on, well, dead bodies, on corpses. So now to the narratives depicted. On one wall there is a story. Shrona Kotikarna, who is just wandering from one place to another, and he is meeting different pretas. So that's a story about existences as preta. Pretas, their life is terrible. They are sitting without getting water, without food in the Iron City. They cannot get help from anyone. So this is on the wall, and when you want to go out of the city, of the cave, this is the final representation of somebody who has to boil, to cook own body and eat it. So that's really terrible life of the preta. So that's one wall. On another wall we have a story. Maitra Kanyaka, he committed terrible deed. His mother wanted to stop him, and he kicked his mother. So he was traveling through the world, and then came to the place. It turned out that this is the hell. So he was there and terrible iron will was cutting his head. So entire cave, when you go out, you see these final points of two narratives, one about Treta, one about hell. I see the program here about this really bad existences with these monks below meditating on the corpse. That was cave 212, just next to it. 213 is not decorated with paintings, but there are a lot of inscriptions. And very many inscriptions, and inscriptions from very different times. So there were several hundred of years inscriptions on this place, and you see on the right side there is a skeleton depicted also there. There are short inscriptions, but some of them also older, and this is about well, it's about Buddhism. So it could be that they were just maybe old monks meditating there, that well, that they were in the area with these depictions of, and people were coming to stay with them to meditate for a while. Well, why to meditate on corpse? This is very Buddhist. Actually, we have a particular part of meditation on integrating corpses. The praxis, which is known all over the Buddhist world. So it is there on the periphery of Kucha area, and maybe there were simply places for the dead bodies, and maybe that was the reason where the first monasteries were built, like we have what Chopin has shown really everywhere in India. Now this northest first century center, this belongs again to the oldest paintings in Kizil, the oldest paintings in Kucha at all, and we really have again these corpses and a meditating point. So there were this one in the east, one in the north, oldest paintings, and we still have cave 92 again belonging to the oldest one. So 92, and on the side of that, historical photograph. No time to read it again, but what Lecoq describes was on this expedition at the beginning of 20th century, huge niche of about 20 meters length, and the present-day depth was not so long, and that was for containers, and in these containers, these urns for well, ashes have been discovered. So also here in cave 92, again we have this, together with corpses, together with places for well, urns, or but connection is there. And when you consider that, I actually really don't see a reason why these places necessarily must be late. They really can be the same old, like the middle part of this, what Vignato considers to be the oldest one, or perhaps even the older than that, just belonging to the periphery. So there was just consideration of that what could have been maybe that give us something more about Tocharian and their beliefs when we just open our eyes for things like that. What we have in Kucha really everywhere, absolutely everywhere, in every cave, sometimes even several of them, there are demons attacking the Buddha. You will not find anything like that in India. It's absolutely not existent. And sometimes, like here, Kizel 163, symmetrically on two sides of paravault. This is not Maravijaya, definitely not. What we can say for sure, because there are monks depicted here. So enlightenment of the Buddha and attacks of Mara is never depicted together with monks. Now, how these demons look like? There's one of them, what you see here, where he is in the middle down. Here he is on the left side. They look like what we call yaksha. Actually, it's really difficult, and that's yaksha is a huge term. Characteristic are these spiky ears, and they are wearing, like in Bavaria, this calf warmers, which we actually hardly can explain, but it's something animalistic about them. They are very, very often depicted with calf warmers. And when you see something like that, you know this is a ghost, one of another sort. So this, on the right side, actually is a positive yaksha. He belongs to the gallery of gods celebrating the parinirvana of the Buddha depicted on the rear corridor of one cave, scene 32. Such representations like that we have several, and there is entire repertoire of different beings here, like these two yakshas. I cannot introduce all of them to you, but there is Indra and Brahma depicted 2 times, one standing in the middle and flying down to celebrate the Buddha. We can meet 4 kings of direction, who play extremely important role of Kucha. They are sort of everywhere there, and they have particular. They are sort of difficult to say, because that's definitely something for soldiers. This is like you depict the general, but farther down there are always barefoot, which is probably very Indian, and how you show the deity is coming from India, it must be barefoot. So there are military, they are definitely in military outfit, and where it is only visible, they have these tiny tongues, so they are really always depicted like, rakshasas or something. So, 4 kings of directions, they are really there. Coming again to this gallery of different beings, Kumbandas are there. We'll come to them again, but they are standing in these characteristic shoes, and they belong really to that. There are women here that I really have no time to introduce you all, but we can explain some of them we cannot. Like this one, for example, I can show you similar representation. Actually, I really believe it is exactly the same person, but we don't know his name, we don't know who he, well, I'm saying about he, but because he looks like a general again and has weapons, but for the same time also women's dress down. Repeat several times, still we don't know who he is or she. Now, several times we have gods which look exactly like Vishnu and Shiva. They belong among demons. They are wearing these calf warmers. Iconography is of Shiva and Vishnu, and we call them Shiva and Vishnu because we don't know anything better. But actually, how they were understood is really difficult to say. It's simply unknown. What they hold is sun and moon in their hands above. Now, they are everywhere, and something really interesting is to observe that where they are on the side of the Buddha is usually sitting, in most of the cases, the Buddha is usually sitting on the lotus, and the lotus is standing in the water. And this imagery about water is really sort of everywhere. I think that was obsession of Tocharian people. Maybe when you are on the desert, you are afraid of water. Really difficult to say. So the Buddha has not only different demons under control, but it's also sitting above the water. Maybe that was the reason of that. So the iconography was this Shiva-like and Vishnu-like gods on the side of the Buddha, and water below. It's repeated several times. I'm not aware about anything like that from India, and we have a specialist of different languages here with us. When you remember Sonnenaufgangswunder, that's not only that different deities are coming, but the Buddha is creating these different lotuses, which is like adoration of different deities, but also sort of miracle of Shravasti, and this water is really everywhere. So water is indeed everywhere, and which make me think that there was an obsession of Tocharian people. The Buddha is shown like coming from water, and also just being having all that water world under control. We have similar representation with different genies from further to the east, but there are different genies standing in the water, but here is definitely the Buddha. And this is on two sides of the entrance to one cave. Now, several times in the paintings, there is a representation of the demon. The demon is standing in the water and is bringing a boy to the Buddha. Grünwedel wanted to connect the story with a narrative of Atavika. Atavika was a bad demon, and people were giving him a tribute, a child every week or every day. And one day, parents came to the Buddha and asked him to save their only son. And the Buddha went to Atavika and converted him and brought the boy back. So we have this story depicted, and the demon is not standing in the water. So that must be something different, and apparently connection, the narrative is not known, but about bad demons, probably kidnapping children, and this one is coming back and bringing the child back to the Buddha. Interestingly, this particular narrative is really repeated so many times that it must belong to the most prominent in the area. It's really strange that that we don't have this particular story. It's really not preserved. Well, when you're afraid of somebody or something, so here there are all these ghosts and rakshasas or pretas or whoever. So apparently also this water demon. There is not even a word. I ask people from knowing Tocharian if they have a word like. It is really not preserved or we don't know the word for water demon. I really ask all philologist to help us with this name. It was so popular narrative there. So when you are afraid of sort of demons, what can you do? The best way is to turn them to helpers, and that's really happened in Kucha. Everywhere in the paintings you have same-looking water demons who are holding the altar, who are supporting the Buddha, so that they really turn to be good water demons. So this one, because this particular part in the painting is hardly ever preserved, we can even support that it could have been really popular, that on the side of the Buddha, imagine that was a sculpture of the Buddha there are these water demons coming from water to support the image. And they support not only the image of the Buddha, they support in several places, they support the dome. So the dome with different deities or with Buddhas or Bodhisattvas standing in water, and the demons, these water demons, support them. It's extremely interesting what is going on there in the water. We have all these kalavinkas and different water animals coming from the waters. Now, such water demons are shown pretty often, and that's again, we do not have anything like that in India. There are usually nagas who support the Buddha and support the stupa and so on. The nagas are there, but not water demons. And again, we have also these donors who can also be supported, if there are donors, not local deities, who are supported by demons coming from the waters. So something like that, when you have the Buddha, when you have different ghosts around, when you have deities who look like Vishnu and Shiva, and especially when they are shown mirroring each other, such scenes. So when you go into a temple and on two sides you have depictions like that, it's really powerful pictures. And demons have no possibility to entrance. Here from this part they are subordinated to the Buddha, and this demon standing with water with the boy is also there. Ines is with us here, and we'll have paper tomorrow, wants to see these representations, actually like visual signs of two very important sutras, Atanatika Sutra, one of them, which is one of the most popular manuscripts found in the area. So Atanatika is it's a story about four kings of direction. Their speaker Kubera is coming and giving important dharani, is giving the mantra against evil spirits. So it really can be that such pictures were sort of raksha literature, visual raksha literature, giving sort of magic against all evil beings. Was in this Atanatika, there was Kubera, who was of importance. Kubera is one of four kings of directions, and these four kings we have depicted in Kucha very, very many times. Not only Kubera, but 3 others, and actually then don't have particular iconography, so they all look the same. They have this military look, but barefoot. But we recognize them seeing all this there, groups of demons with them. So that must be Virupaksha from the west, because there are Nagas depicted around. So in this particular cave, which is Kizil 67, on the rear wall, one of the most interesting paintings has been preserved. You say preserved is maybe not so good word, but when you blow up, especially in the lower part, it's still several things which could be recognized, and we have historical photographs in Musée Gumet. That's from the French expedition in the beginning of 20th century. Also, Grunwald expedition had seen this painting and made some drawings. Upper part is not so well, but still it is possible to recognize a lot. So what is the painting showing? There are 4 kings of directions, because there are 4, so in every quarter, and they all have the same iconography, and several, like snakes above the heads of, in the upper left corner, it's possible to recognize. So we have Nagas, Yakshas, Kumbandas, and Gandharvas. Gandharvas are heavenly musicians. So the kings look all the same. They look like these generals barefoot, and on their sides are different genies, always in connections with them. Well, and here again we have 4 kings of direction kneeling in front of the person in the center. And from this point, the trouble starts. Who is he? It is definitely not Indra, so actually 4 kings of direction are never shown in the vicinity of Indra, but that was somebody supposed that. It is not Indra, it is not Indra's crown, this is preserved. It is definitely not Bodhisattva, because a lack of body nimbus, that cannot be, and it's of course also not the Buddha. So we have a deity so important that kings of directions are shown around, and we simply don't know who he is. It's anything Buddhist, I'm afraid. Now, when we go to several pictures, actually I took the best preserved, but I'm aware about more of them. There is the Buddha in the middle, they can be kings of directions around, but please note that there are persons not direct to the Buddha, but to the outside, which is really particular. So they are kneeling or holding hands together towards somebody on the side. This is well preserved, and here it is possible to see that it's particular deity, particular demon, looking quite strange, and the person he is turning to, it's definitely not a king of direction, so it's somebody else looking really like in the crown, like a prince, like a king. We don't know who that is. Iconography repeats several times. That's the end of the scene, so that's definitely not towards another one, but they are directed to person standing above them. It is something not really Buddhist which is going on here, and sort of local deities who are actually turning towards the Buddha, but people, they govern, they venerate them, not the Buddha. So something really strange and actually impossible that something like that would ever exist in Indian art. Now, this is something which I'm really proud about, that I was able to find important people who helped me to explain who this particular individual is. There is an inscription above, and the inscription tells us, Dr. Dieter Mauer, great Tochariologist, could help me. Kumpante lokita pa. Kumpante is nothing else in Tocharian like kumbanda. Kumbanda, it's a sort of ghosts belonging to the king of direction of the south. In Indian mythology, south is always connected with death, and kumbandas are always sort of this really bad ghosts. South is, when the stupas are directed, that south is danger. South is really danger. Now, we also have other readings. In Ogihara, we have in our workshop here, so you will on Zoom, and the day after tomorrow you have possibility to have them. They read the inscription in different way, and they recognize, being in situ, that the same wording is repeating. So they read it a little bit different, Mahakumbanda Lokitatvam, and connected this with seeing, so that the great Kumbanda is seeing, is looking, is seeing. I think Mauer is right, because he read this Lokita Pa, and in Atanatika Sutra, which I mentioned before, individual Kumbanda by the name Lohita is really there. And Heinrich Lüders will still come to this place. There are texts found in the caves, and Kumbanda by the name Lohitapha was also named, so that must be one and the same individual. Mauer thought that maybe it's Lohitapha, so somebody drinking blood. So this individual really does not look very friendly, but he is here in the interior, on the side of this Parinirvana place, where relics are being shared, depicted in this real corridor. So Lohita, however we read it, but he is in any case Mahakumbanda. Now, he had once a brother. Paintings, once again, I'll go here back. So Lohitapha is on the rear corridor on the left side. Now we jump to the right side, and here was his brother, who was removed, taken to Berlin, and unfortunately destroyed during the Second World War. So we have today only one drawing, which was not so good, by Grünwedel, so that I made another drawing. Because in Paris, in Musée Gumet, is still this historical photograph. And on this photograph, it was again Mauer was successful to read an inscription. Unfortunately, we still know that for sure that was again Mahakumbanda. Unfortunately, we don't have his particular name any longer. So here we have these two Mahakumbhandas, and interesting thing, we can see their attributes. They are wearing very funny boots, which look like in Middle Ages in Europe. And they have different, so they have mice, which also repeat, they have bells, so bells is something for kumbhandas, and they are bald-headed. If somebody has an idea why kumbhanda actually should be bald-headed, we don't know. People among us knowing Sanskrit can translate kumbhanda. It's actually somebody with genitals so huge like pots. So it's really funny. But nobody said that kumbhandas should have heads like pots or like eggs, andas or something. So actually that's really only Tocharian interpretation. But it was definitely like that. It indeed repeats several times. And when you recognize them once, you will see kumbhandas with bald heads quite everywhere. As you see here, we have 12 different individuals, and 2 or 3 among them, and there are kumbhandas. And I can imagine that they had particular names, just not any kumbhandas, but probably one of them is this Lohitapa. Now, the most interesting thing about this kumbhandas is that in Kizil 28, which is not interesting cave at all, paintings were probably never there, and in the niche, on the upper part of the niche, we again have, there was Mahakumbhanda. Well, the cave might be not interesting. There is no place for the Buddha in this cave. This is an interesting point. This is a really interesting point, since it is the only example. So I cannot say we had in Kucha places, not for the Buddha, but for kumbhandas or yakshas or rakshasas or something. So I don't dare, because that's one and only example, but it is possible actually, and that would explain us that all these different beings who are not adoring the Buddha, but who are actually turning away from him. Now, nobody ever supposed anything like that in Kucha, because we are so much oriented on this Buddha shrines. But from India, we have several such examples. In Ajanta, directly on the side of the main shrine of the Buddha, there are small shrines for yakshas. In one is Hariti and her husband, probably Kubera here, and 2 male yakshas on the other side. And the shrines are not necessarily much smaller than the main shrine of the Buddha. So actually it's no reason why we should not suppose anything like that. Actually we should. In the new cave, new discoveries in Andhra, in Panigiri, it was a shrine of beautiful yaksha directly on the side of the Buddha. So things like that happened. And actually this is the way how Buddhism was growing. All these stories about conversions, there were bad individuals like Hariti or Atavika, and the Buddha converted them, but they were coming okay. But we have to eat something. When we should not eat children, what we are going to eat? And the Buddha said, now in my temple here you will have an altar and people will bring food to you. And that's really fantastic process, because you have these deities from the area incorporated into Buddhist temples. So we have it in several places in India, and actually no reason why we should not suppose anything similar in Kucha too. Who is the person here? I cannot answer, but I can only ask people working on philology, have a look. Maybe you will find somebody, because we do have interiors in Kucha with not a single Buddha. We just think about it. Think about it. This is definitely not Bodhisattva. This is definitely not the Buddha. One really interesting interior is preserved. This is Kizil 3, not 4. Pardon me, that's Kizil 3. I was able only to make a drawing from this tiny part on actually that's the back wall, and I suppose something similar to this representation of with one person in the middle, this king of deities or whoever, with different kings of directions and different genies around. But this is only one part of that. What we know for sure that there were two. So that's Grünwedel writes that was a larger person in the middle and seen on the sides in two registers. So sort of similar. Like in cave 67. Now, not preserved today, but we have descriptions of Grünwedel on the side. He still could see what he calls Dämonenfürst, sovereign of demons, surrounded by women, some of them playing music. In entire interior, not a single Buddha. They were only demons, they were only, well, for whom? Next to that, monks were staying. Now, that's only a theoretical way what I can say, but what we definitely should search for is who were Naivasikas. Naivasika is actually a word which it's nothing wrong about the word. It's Naivasika, it's somebody, it's staying here local. It's local. It's from the word itself, nothing connection with the demons. But we know from literature, we know from several texts that they were very, very dangerous, the Naivasikas. Now, Heinrich Lüder's old papers, and he was actually interested in geographical matters, but he collected manuscripts which are so precious. There are formula, there are forms. There are forms for future donations, just to be filled. The name should be put in, and maybe to just write down what the person wants to donate, how many, I don't know, if the coins or maybe sort of sacks with something that I don't know, but maybe Lüders knew about it. So there were formulas and donation for the monks, for the sanghas. But the merit of the donation should go to different person. There was a king, there were different ministers, they were own dead parents or family, and also names of different deities. I don't want to make it boring for you, but what you have seen. Brahma and Indra, Dhritarashtra, Virupaksha, they are 4 kings of directions, and Kumbhandas with this Lohita Bha we have with inscriptions, Nagas, gods, and Naivasikas. Naivasikas are local deities, and they are really danger, and they must get money, they must get food. They were probably the local deities of the Tocharians. Thank you.